समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Tensions between India and Bangladesh are soaring. This as a Shashi Tharoor-led parliamentary panel has warned that the emerging situation in Bangladesh with the return of Islamist anti-India forces might be the biggest strategic challenge and threat to India since 1971. Bangladesh is on the boil once again. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. On the program today, we look at the fallout for India's strategic interests as Bangladesh becomes a ticking bomb once again. This time, it is the death of an anti-India student leader who died 6 days after he was shot. Anti-India Islamist forces have taken over the street protests. In the last few hours, we have seen Bangladesh slip into some sort of anarchy almost, as cultural institutions and media houses, prominent newspapers of Bangladesh have in fact been burnt and torched. A Hindu man has been lynched. India has, in the last 2 days, summoned the Bangladesh envoy and protested the deteriorating security situation around its missions and the residences of its diplomats. Meanwhile, protesters are trying to march towards the border in West Bengal. As I mentioned, a parliamentary panel led by Shashi Tharoor has warned that the situation in Bangladesh is emerging to be one of the biggest strategic challenges for India since 1971. Just 2 days ago, in fact, India commemorated Vijay Diwas, the birth of Bangladesh enabled by the Indian Army. Forces in Bangladesh today are trying to now erase that history. Mujibur Rahman's house was among those torched and attacked by protesters. This even as the country waits for the next set of elections. Yes, Sheikh Hasina is still in India, but the Foreign Secretary has clarified to a parliamentary panel, the same Tharoor-led panel, that the government of India does not facilitate her political activities in any manner. What's happening in Bangladesh? What's happening between India and Bangladesh? What does this mean as China and Pakistan play their own games in Bangladesh? Let me introduce three very distinct and distinguished guests today. Ambassador Veena Sikri is with us. She's a veteran diplomat. She has, of course, special expertise in Bangladesh, a country where she has on-ground experience. It's good to see you, ma'am. Also joining us is our Bangladeshi guest today with, of course, his own perspective, likely to be very different from what I have just spelled out. Political analyst Mohammad Ishraq. Welcome to the program, Mr. Ishraq. And also joining me is veteran journalist and writer and editor Padma Rao, who has spent years covering the foreign policy beat and the immediate neighborhood. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, anti-India protests are now dominating the street in Bangladesh, where homes, missions, media houses, everything, cultural institutions, everything is up for grab after an anti-India student leader died 6 days after he was shot. We have seen horrific images come out of Bangladesh. If we can actually move to those images of violence to give you a sense of what's been happening on the streets. Media houses, major newspapers of Bangladesh are also under attack. Let me get the Indian perspective here, and then I'll come to my Bangladeshi guest. Ambassador Sikri, the parliamentary panel led by Mr. Tharoor is calling this a worrying situation for two reasons. China and Pakistan, their influence, the rapprochement between the Yunus regime in Pakistan, the rise of Islamist anti-India forces, and the fact that there is a kind of rupture, as the panel argues, in the political system, where nobody in fact knows who's in control. How do you see the last few hours that have unfolded in Dhaka and elsewhere?
Well, thank you, Barkha. I think the last few hours, as they have unfolded, are intrinsically linked to what has been happening in Bangladesh since July, August 2024. And I think we have to recognize that the forces that brought about the regime change operation in July, August 24, it was not a students' uprising. It was not spontaneous at all. It was no revolution. It was a meticulously planned, to use Mohammed Yunus's own words, meticulously planned regime change operation led by the Jamaat-e-Islami of Bangladesh, backed by Pakistan, and backed in turn by other external Western powers. And certainly when Pakistan is there, you know that China is fully involved with that. Basically, the objective of the revolution, of this regime change, I will not call it a revolution at all. The objective of the regime change was to reverse what happened in 1971. Notice that the forces that brought about the regime change are all those that were on the losing side in 1971. Whether it was Pakistan, the Radhakars of Bangladesh, the Jamaat-e-Islami, America, all of them were on the losing side in 1971. And now they brought about this change, wanting to reverse and go back to the pre-1971 situation. And that is what Pakistan has been focusing on in the last 18 months of their activities in Bangladesh. So the Jamaat-e-Islami, even this person who has been killed, Osman Hadi, he's a Islamic Chhatar Shibir person. He's a person from the Jamaat-e-Islami. And he has been, and they've all been espousing the strong anti-India rhetoric just from July of last year, even before July of last year, linking whatever Sheikh Hasina did, whatever she's accused of, with India. And because of that, saying you've got to condemn India. And also we to combine it with saying, you mentioned the death of Dipu Chandra Das, and I think that's very valid a pointer that you have raised, because many are totally ignoring it. And the first thing, Sheikh Hasina's plane had hardly left Bangladesh territory when the attack on the minorities began. The Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, Sufis and the Ahmadiyya, the attempt was to drive them out and to have, and this has been continuing. What happened to Dipu Chandra Das yesterday is the most barbaric example, a medieval killing. You beat somebody to death, you put them on a stick, you burn them, you throw the body on the highway. This is barbaric. This is not a 21st century civilization. These are not people who belong to the 21st century who are doing this. And I think the strongest condemnation is needed for that. And I think that the point is that over these last 18 months, despite all these efforts by the Jamaat-e-Islami and others, their popularity has not gone up. They thought that now they will be the one, they will have this anti-Indian campaign and they will be so popular suddenly that they will win the election. But that has not happened. People are now remembering Sheikh Hasina and saying, Aage balo Sheikh, it was better earlier. And in fact, because of this, the Yunus regime has banned the Awami League, has banned the Jatiya Party from taking part. This is completely undemocratic. And in fact, the uncertainty, the killings, this is all that's happening in Bangladesh is because of this, because the Awami League vote bank is intact. They want to take part in the elections. Prothom, the newspaper that was torched, the single largest Bengali language newspaper of Bangladesh, 7.6 million online and print edition. This newspaper published a national opinion survey a few days ago saying that 70% of those surveyed want the Awami League to participate in the elections. It doesn't mean 70% vote for Awami League, no, but it means that the people want a free, fair and inclusive election. Without that, this instability will continue. Without that, this instability will remain. And this is, in fact, something that has to be recognized and which the Yunus regime is deliberately trying to avoid recognition of. The control of the media in Yunus's hands is complete. I mean, they have taken over all the media houses, but yet when Prothom published a survey of 70% wanting Awami League to participate, their offices have been burnt. So this kind of, I would say really retrograde violence and absolutely knee-jerk reaction, wanting to force everybody to one point of view is not, and the moment Osman Hadi was shot, the Indian High Commissioners called and said India has something to do with it. India is being blamed in minutes, as if, this is just something, no investigation, nothing, saying India did. Obviously, we denied it. And in fact, we again said, please have free, fair, and inclusive elections. The Indian government, MEA, called in the Bangladesh High Commissioner 2 days ago and told him also in no uncertain terms that this kind of anti-Indian rhetoric, this kind of blaming India is not correct. Immediately after that, the mob started marching onto the Indian High Commission in Dhaka. They marched onto the Rajshahi Assistant High Commission, Khulna Assistant High Commission, and yesterday night, the Chattogram High Commission. And in fact, they had to be pushed back with tear gas bombs by the police, and the army is there now. So this kind of whipping up is not leading to any solution. In fact, all we are saying is, please have inclusive elections. Let me give you the example of Rajapaksa, regime change operation in Sri Lanka. Rajapaksa government brought down, very popular, strong government brought down, but in the elections, they were allowed to take part. Of course, they didn't get votes, fine. Somebody else got elected, that's even fine. So that is why to have, and now you have a stable Sri Lanka, you have a stable situation there. So I think that this is the only answer, and it has to be recognized. And everybody has to recognize that the majority people, Bangladesh, the Awami League vote bank is intact. Perhaps other people who don't like Sheikh Hasina, but who still believe in the liberation war values, they also, want free, fair, and inclusive elections so that the situation can normalize and you can get back to a democratic lifestyle, which all of them want. People realize that the 15 years of close cooperation between, Indian government and Sheikh Hasina's government, she respected our security red lines on Northeast Indian insurgent groups, and in exchange we got a whole array of cooperation and full economic growth. Today they are bringing back the Northeast, throwing a map saying we want to take over Northeast. Mohammed Yunus goes to China and talks about saying, come to Bangladesh, we will show you we are the only ones who have access to Northeast. Deliberate statements to incite the Northeast
And
Indian.
it's important to note that the student leader who has died is actually somebody who would share a map of this so-called Greater Bangladesh. Picking up Ambassador Sikri on the point that you just made. Now, I want to bring in our guest from Bangladesh, but I'm told there's a power cut. Oh, he's back with us, and then I'll come to Padma. Let me get Mohammed Ashraq now. Mohammed Ashraq, I understand that your perspective might be very different from us in India. My question, therefore, will be very specific to avoid a sort of tutu meme finger pointing between you and us. My question is, why are Bangladesh media houses being set on fire? Why are two of the largest newspapers being set on fire? Whatever be the differences of opinion between a section of those on the street and us here in India, why are newspapers of Bangladesh being burnt by protesters? Is anybody in charge? Who is in control of these protests? What is happening?
Thanks for inviting me. You have asked a very pertinent question, but I am afraid that I cannot divulge all the information or my perspective in full, partly because the political climate will not approve, and also partly because there are security concerns. Ever since the revolution, I have been facing death threats, especially after my dear friend Hadi was shot. I have been receiving death threats from Awami League activists who have been fled to India. They have also targeted my family. They have published my address. So there are these concerns as well. You have asked why the media houses are being attacked and who is in control of the protests. But before we can answer that, we have to understand who is controlling the state machinery. If you see, there are multiple power corridors, so multiple centers of power. On the one hand, you have BNP. On the other hand, you have Jamaat, two poles that have emerged in the post-revolutionary scenario. I would like to use this moment to disagree with what Ambassador Veena Sikri said. The revolutionary forces, they were not all on the losing side in 1971. In fact, BNP was formed by Ziaur Rahman, who declared the independence of Bangladesh in March 1971. He was on the winning side as much as one could be in that side. So I think BNP would take a great offense if you either call them that they were not on the winning side, or or that they were.
I think Ambassador Sikri has an interjection, but before that, if I may just ask you one thing, just one thing. You said you cannot divulge everything because the security climate does not allow you to do so. My question to you is simple. If you do not feel safe in your own country, why would our diplomats from our country feel safe? Why would religious minorities feel safe? You know, if you who is aligned, as far as I understand, to those who brought down the Hasina regime and support the Yunus regime, so you are on the side largely, broadly, of the current political regime. If you do not feel safe, what about those who disagree with this regime? What about those from India who are still stationed there as representatives of our country? What about religious minorities, Mr. Ishraq?
Yeah, so Hasina has been talking to people from India, and she has been inciting violence. She has been directly giving threats. She has been saying that, okay, you just you don't tell me that you can do this and this thing. You just kill people and show me. These are the things.
So you're saying Sheikh Hasina is so powerful that sitting in Delhi without any support system but her personal devices, she can actually direct the entire situation in Bangladesh. She has that much of a following.
Well, Hadi has been killed by her people, and her people, as far as our government is telling us, they have fled to India. So I'm not accusing that India is behind this, but the fact is the people who have been doing it, they are using India as their base and they're fleeing to that country.
I should say here, Mohammad Ishraq, that India has specifically rubbished that allegation and has said it's absolutely untrue. In fact, the envoy of Bangladesh here in Delhi was summoned. India protested very fiercely. So just as your government is sharing things with you, I should share with you what our government is sharing with us. That said, Ambassador Sikri had an interjection, and then I'll come to Padma, and then, of course, we have more questions. Ambassador Sikri, we are in a very peculiar situation. We are in a situation where India has condemned the attempt to link us to the death of this man who was an anti-India student protester. However, this kind of anti-India sentiment that is being whipped up on the streets that you hear in many sections of Bangladesh political opinion today, that doesn't answer why their own newspapers are being targeted. Surely they're not saying Sheikh Hasina's people are setting these newspapers on fire. I mean, what is going on here? Ambassador Sikri and then Padma. Yeah,
absolutely. So just one very quick question where he had talked about the BNP being a revolutionary force. I think we should know that the BNP is today split. There's a moderate faction of the BNP who in fact had supported the issue of Awami League participating in the elections, because the BNP knows that they themselves were criticizing Sheikh Hasina on this issue of elections and participation in elections. So it is a mockery for Muhammad Yunus to now hold elections banning the Awami League because he's doing the same thing that he accused Sheikh Hasina of doing, number one. So BNP certainly has been supporting Sheikh Hasina, but there is a strong pro-Jamaat Islami section of the BNP, and they have been they have subdued the other section and so on. So that is one thing. Secondly, I think that this whole issue of saying that, at least you're recognizing that it's a Awami League activist or anybody, you're accusing them, although I don't even know if that's correct. But saying that they have fled to India, your own border guards have nothing to do with it. I mean, you think that, that you have no border guards at all. They're all gone to sleep and they can, just let people come in and out of the country. Blaming India for everything is not the answer. And you must also understand the great strategic restraint that India is showing. We are allowing all the trade to go through, all the rice and other things to keep, the difficulties for the common man in check. Otherwise, we know in the situation that is there today, how many factories have been burnt, economic output is at a complete low, no foreign investment, prices very high, rampant unemployment. All this is a very volatile mix. And that is what is causing a huge amount of dissatisfaction. Please don't put everything in terms of politics. Common men have, common awam, as we call them, the people, they have their own lives to live. And they have their own necessities. The duty of interim regime is not a government. It is an unconstitutional, illegal government. It has no reason to exist because it should have had, even if you consider it a caretaker, which it is not, it should have had elections within 90 days and it should have had a non-party caretaker government. All the Islamist groups were in the caretaker advisors. So they have no right to conduct these elections. It would be a proper caretaker.
Let me get Padma to come in, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Ishraq. Padma, you haven't spoken yet. I have a few questions. We have seen known extremists actually holding rallies on the streets of Bangladesh. Mohammad Ishraq may differ with my nomenclature, but if he can just, in fact, show some of these images, you have Sheikh Hasina's son making the allegation that terror groups like the Jaish and Lashkar are now able to operate from Bangladeshi soil. This is something he has said to me on record. Before I get Mohammad Ishraq to respond to that, this lashing out at India, also a long march. What I find contradictory is, on the one hand, it is being said that two people have fled to India. On the other hand, protesters are actually taking out a long march to the border. So they're almost ratcheting up the situation at the border, where anything can happen. Anything can happen if you provoke Indian security forces at the border. As Ambassador Sikri said, there's a lot of restraint being shown by India. What is even going on here?
Hi, Barkha. Thank you for having me on your show. The first thing, I don't know if you can hear me because some parts of your question were cut off.
We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. But as our guest from Bangladesh was saying, the needle of suspicion for this murder falls on the Awami League. Of course, that was to be expected. I have a few points to make, please bear with me. Coming from an army family which was part of the Indian liberation of Bangladesh and the surrender of Pakistan, months of blackouts and air raids, sirens and all that in 1971, I really can't help feeling annoyed and hugely disappointed with what is happening in Bangladesh and this blame game that they've, launched into against India. I feel that this is a generation in Bangladesh that neither knows nor particularly cares about the fact that if it were not for India, they would still be a part of Pakistan and still downtrodden by Pakistani Punjabis and Sindhis and whoever rules the roost there. Now, this tilt, I'm glad you brought up the Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar, because this tilt towards religious radicalism has been in place, as you know, since the mid-2000s. I reported out of there for Der Spiegel, as did my colleagues from Time and the erstwhile Far East Economic Review, that Ayman al-Zawahiri, the number 2 of Osama bin Laden, had been afforded safe passage through Dhaka and Chattogram at the behest of the Jamaat Islami, the same Jamaat Islami, which received me courteously, but of course did not confirm, but did not deny these reports. Now, that was during Begum Khalida Zia's tenure as PM, and the BNP was always close to the Jamaat. Certainly there are certain moderate factions now, which reads automatically as close to Pakistan, and it has always been anti-India. Now, I see this murder and the needle of suspicion tilting towards the Awami League slightly differently, though I can understand why it's tilting towards it. The Jamaat and the BNP, I feel, are poised to return at this election, which has been announced for February 12th, and because of the absence of the Awami League, I mean, largely because of that. And Hadi and his very volatile breed of followers may well have been seen as a threat, no longer an asset, for that return. So given Hadi's huge popularity and his, stance against practically all the so-called establishment in Bangladesh, he's rallied against Professor Yunus. He's spoken against various other factions of this this interim regime. Get rid of someone who represents a huge political threat at the election in February, because you remember he spared nobody from criticism. Just to come back to what the Jamaat Secretary General is quoted as having said recently, Pakistan surrendered to India, not to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is still a province of Pakistan. Ghulam Parvar said this. So I feel that all events of the past days point towards an Islamist coup d'etat, if you like. It is inevitable that Yunus will be removed, and in all likelihood, the BNP, propped and significantly supported by the Jamaat again and other Islamist groups, will also come to power. And the BNP, however, is likely to remain a puppet government with the actual power in the hands of the Islamists / controlled by Pakistan, and Bangladesh will go from being from a poor democracy to a rich democracy. It will now return to becoming a completely regressive Islamic country, or what's worse, a province of Pakistan, the erstwhile East Pakistan. So Professor Yunus is definitely losing control. And I mean, for instance, you mentioned the media houses. In his address, he condoned and restraint, and he said that let our law enforcement agencies carry out their investigations with professionalism. This makes me ask, where was the so-called professionalism and this rule of law when Osman Hadi was attacked? Surely, given the turbulent state of affairs since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, vigilance and security, especially around the key protagonists who were behind their ouster, like Hadi, should have been increased.
Absolutely. I think that last point is an excellent question. So let me take it to Muhammad Ishraq. Two questions. One, Padma's point that why wasn't there more security around Hadi when he was such a key player in the ouster of Hasina? Surely his security is the responsibility of the Yunus government. Question one. Question two, from an Indian perspective, the reconciliation between Pakistan and Bangladesh is very interesting to watch. This is the month, as I said, we are just 2 days after Bangladesh was birthed, with the help, as you know, of the Indian Army, the 1971 war. We have just commemorated Vijay Divas here. The point being made here is that what the reconciliation with Pakistan, the tilt towards Pakistan, how do you explain that? So two questions there for you, Mr. Ishraq. Well, I think he was mentioning to us problems with his electricity. So I'm sure he'll rejoin and maybe take those questions. Yeah, Padma, you have a sentence there, and then I want to go to Ambassador Sikri. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we shouldn't forget that there are so many. I mean, of course, the Awami League is being blamed, but there's also, it could have been Pakistan itself. You combine Islamist radicalism and India bashing, and what you have. This is a perfect breeding ground for Pakistan to stage its mischief and its thousand needles policy, from around the region. And if you look at the tensions in Myanmar, Barkha, and beyond, for instance, the recent face-off between Thailand and Cambodia, one can, certainly sense a China hand behind it, as the MEA has implied, if not stated outrightly.
Absolutely. And I think the parliamentary panel report actually flags specifically the role of China and Pakistan in what's happening in Bangladesh today. Mr. Shah, now that we have you back, if you'd like to respond, how do you see this reconciliation process with Pakistan? And, Padma was saying, how do we know Pakistan isn't fomenting trouble or China isn't? It would suit them perfectly. Their aim would be to drive a deeper wedge between New Delhi and Dhaka.
Okay. So I have to unpack a few things. First of all, Ms. Padma was saying that the Secretary General of Jamaat has said that Bangladesh is still a province of Pakistan. This is not factually correct. What he was referring to was that Bangladesh has become subservient to India. Yes, it is true that without India's help, Bangladesh might not have gotten its independence. Might not have. I'm not sure if that is the case. I mean, no one knows with certainty.
We can't rewrite history now. We can't rewrite history, Mr. Ishraq.
No, there are lots of facts.
Our army went to war for the birth of your country. I think we should respect the 71 heroes. I would find it very problematic to allow you to say that. While I believe in a democratic space, the images you see on your screen is the surrender of the Pakistan army to the Indian army. 93,000 prisoners of war were taken from Pakistan. If this war had not been fought by my country's military, your country would simply not exist today. I just cannot allow the erasure of this history.
I think the freedom fighters in my country would object to the idea that without India's help, that is the decisive factor. So if you say that India was the decisive factor in Bangladesh's independence from Pakistan, I think they would object to that. I'm only referring to that. I'm not saying.
I think East Pakistan would still exist and Bangladesh would not. It's quite clear.
Okay. I have to agree to disagree here because I'm not.
All right.
I'm saying it's one of the possibilities, but there might be other possibilities.
I'm just saying it's a disservice both to those who fought for your country's birth, but it's a big disservice to our country's army because it was not our war and we still fought it and we went to war and we enabled the birth of your country. So I think that acknowledgement, whatever other differences you may have with us today, I think that acknowledgement, and to not have that acknowledgement, is a complete rewriting of history and a complete disrespect to men who went to war for Bangladesh. I think we'd be calling it East Pakistan today if 1971 hadn't happened.
Look, there are two things here. First one is, I'm not saying that Indian army did not play any role. My point is whether its role was the decisive factor. So that is a debate. I think
I don't think it's a debate. With respect, I think my guests are also getting very agitated over this. So let me get 2 quick responses from them very quickly, because we have other questions for you. Ambassador Sikri, to you first.
I think that the obsession of the people who are now think they're in power in Bangladesh, the obsession to prove that whatever India did was wrong is going to be the end of them, because the point is that the people of Bangladesh think otherwise. And I think I have lived in Bangladesh. I've lived in Bangladesh through a very difficult time, but I know the response of the people of Bangladesh. I'm not talking of the government of the day, which was very different, but I'm talking of the people of Bangladesh. And they value India and Bangladesh was shoulder to shoulder. And Bangladesh understood what was going on. And India's military intervention, India's military support was absolutely decisive. You're absolutely right, Barkha, on what you say. And the question that we were not even shoulder to shoulder, and that whether it was decisive or not, this is really a kind of a historical nitpicking, which will really cannot but be the end of this group's popularity in Bangladesh.
But it also gives you a sense of the kind of dangerous post-generational, post-war, thinking you're dealing with.
Just because everybody in India remembers 1947, even though generations have come afterwards.
That's right. That's right.
In Bangladesh also, everybody remembers. They're proud of the liberation war.
Yeah.
They're proud of the way Bangladesh became independent. Even though there are people who today are, trying to be rulers, but they may not even have been born in 1971, but that's fine. But you still remember the history of your country. Those who do not learn the lessons of history are forced to repeat them. They should remember that.
Absolutely. Okay, Padma, very quickly, then I think we have to give Mr. Ishraq the mic again. Yeah.
Very quickly, Ishraq, I think it's semantics that you're playing around with, because what you said is essentially exactly the same thing that the Secretary General of the Jamaat is being quoted as saying, including incidentally by your own media concerns. So, by saying that India merely fought a war with Pakistan in 1971 and that Bangladesh had nothing to do with it, I think you're doing a huge disservice not only to the Indian armed forces, but to each and every Indian of that generation who, actually sacrificed a lot. We laid down a lot, we sacrificed a lot, and I very well remember it. I was 11 years old or 10 years old. And I remember very well that Bangladesh, it was on everybody's lips. In fact, the entire nation wanted to liberate Bangladesh, not for India's own selfish reasons, but simply because there was bloodshed going on and there were terrible,
absolutely,
there was a terrible genocide. So you cannot tell me that the figures of that genocide were just merely sort of fantasized and drawn out of thin air by the Indians, nor by India.
I think this will have to be one of the red lines of, as an Indian, that we will have to draw. But I want to ask you a contemporary question, Mr. Ishraq. And the contemporary question is, how do you see your relationship with Pakistan today? How does today's Bangladesh see the relationship with Pakistan?
Well, I understand that every nation state has its own history. And the way you are drawing the red lines, it feels a bit suffocating. So you have to allow me some space so that...
Sir, you don't have space to speak freely in your own country. I think you probably have more space on my program than you do in Dhaka today. But you said it yourself. In the beginning, you said, I can't speak openly, I'm not safe.
Because of a fugitive person that you are harboring in India, I hope the government...
So Sheikh Hasina in Delhi is, if you believe that Miss Hasina is so powerful that everything happening in Bangladesh today is because of her, then actually you acknowledge that she has great sway over the street and this regime is forced. You understand that there's a contradiction in terms in what you're saying. If Hasina's Awami League is directing all of this, if she's able to remote control from wherever she is in India, remote control this entire agitation, firstly, why would she encourage an anti-India agitation? Please do explain. Your argument is entirely illogical, okay. Mr. Ishraq.
You have to give me some time. First of all, what Awami League wants at this moment is chaos, full of chaos. Its primary objective is to prevent... Ambassador Sikri, I respect your opinion, but you have to allow me to speak.
Okay, please.
So, the chaos. Why does it need the chaos? It needs the chaos to prevent the elections from taking place. Because if the elections take place free and fair without any fear of intimidation, 70 to 80%, that is my guess. I have been talking to the people on the street. Although Ambassador Sikri might think that she knows Bangladesh better than I do and knows Bangladesh is better than I, despite being a Bangladeshi, no. the reality is people are eager to vote. They have not been able to vote for 17 years. The person that you are harboring in India, she has been denying us that right. I have never been able to vote in my adult life, so this will be my first time voting.
So why did Yunus take so long to announce elections?
Because we needed to enact reforms. Everything was rotten. Ambassador Sikri made a point that what the Bangladeshi border guards are doing, I would let her know what they were doing. So there was a person named Shukranjan Bali, a Hindu man, whose brother was killed by the West Pakistani military in 1971. He was abducted by Hasina's men, tortured to falsify his testimony against a Jamaat Islami leader, Hasina's opponent, Delwar Hossain Saidi. And when that Shukranjan Bali, a Hindu man, refused to follow Hasina's orders, he was found in Kolkata jail. So we now have our
I don't know where we're going with this. I had a question for you which you haven't answered. How do you see Pakistan's role?
Pakistan's role, well, look, with India, I don't know how many times I should have to be thankful to India for...
I just asked you, how do you see Pakistan's role? I didn't ask you about India.
Oh, yes, so we cannot be solely dependent on India. We have our food security concerns and other concerns. We have to diversify our sources for everything. We don't have a policy of enmity towards Pakistan. So if South Asia needs to
when you say we do not have enmity towards Pakistan, who's the we in that?
Certainly Bangladesh. And
you mean this? Okay, let's take that last comment. We do not have enmity with Pakistan. We have to diversify our dependencies. We cannot depend only on India. Let's get comments to that. Padma, I'll start with you.
You know, it's easy to brush off the years and decades of dependency that you have had. Before, ironically, it was under the Awami League's Sheikh Hasina government that Bangladesh came to its sort of economic, came into economic prosperity. We've all traveled there. We've witnessed a lot of changes. There may have been a lot of negatives, and you are well within your right to criticize the negatives of a government and as a citizen of Bangladesh to say, to reject this party. But I am really wondering how you can speak of democracy, Ishaq. You said, you want to have a free and fair election. What democracy? Your biggest party is banned from contesting. The fledgling party's leader, highly popular leader, has been bumped off. Okay, he's been killed. And at the age of 32, I mean, that too. So he had great promise for a long... so your whole, the average Bangladeshi's dream of shaking off the two, let's say the two large parties, the BNP and the Awami League, both of whom were almost sort of dynastic in their rule because they kept, rule kept changing hands between these two parties. Many young Bangladeshis, and I can empathize and understand with that, wanted to get rid of them and wanted a youth movement to come into existence. But that young man has been killed. So what democracy are you speaking of when you say you're going into election? Your biggest party is banned, and the minute institutions of liberalism, if you like cultural centers, media concerns, minorities are attacked and demolished and lynched, it is a surefire sign that a full-fledged, regressive, Pakistan-style Islamist state, or worse, as I said, a resurgence of or a return to East Pakistan is in the making, with ample help and support from the ISI, from Pakistan, and with the shadow of China hovering in the background. That is clear to everyone. So you cannot say that it's a democracy because you're certainly not going into a democratic election. That's
okay. I have to give Ambassador Sikri the last word, but I'll allow Muhammad Ishaq a rebuttal there. Or actually, let's look ahead. What is your expectation given this from the election? And do you believe it's fair that the Awami League is banned from participating? Because after all, if she's so wildly unpopular, the people will reject her.
Well, first of all, we do not allow terrorist factions like Hizb ut-Tahrir, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist groups to participate in election. No country, no democracy in the world does that. We do not allow, and we should not be allowing foreign agents to participate in our election. I am not pointing any fingers.
Well, I'm asking you about the Awami League. Do you think that all of the entire Awami League is a bunch of foreign agents, the entire party?
That is very clear where it is based.
The entire party, the entire political party that has been at the helm of Bangladesh government for years. You mean Bangladesh all these years was ruled by foreign agents?
It was a neo-colonial form of government. It was a neo-colonial form of government.
I find it very difficult to engage with this I just find it difficult to engage with this. You are basically saying, let me ask you again, Mr. Ishraq. You are saying that this entire entity is,
Look, first
one minute, let me ask my question. You are saying
have
the
given
entire,
me the least amount of time of all the people.
I'm asking you a question. You can answer the question, sir. So do you believe Mujibur Rahman was a foreign agent?
Right now, the Awami League that we have, it is a foreign agent. It is a terrorist entity. It should not be allowed to participate in an election. No country, no democracy in the world. Just like I oppose the participation of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and other terrorist factions to participate in
what does one say if you are comparing in the same sentence, Mr. Ishraq, you are calling Awami League and Al-Qaeda in the same sentence? I don't know how to engage with that argument.
Just because Awami League does not shout Allahu Akbar from the top of their lungs these days does not mean that it is not a terrorist.
That's why I asked you. So Mujibur Rahman, the founding father of your country, whose statues were brought down by the men who ousted this government, is a foreign agent according to you, because he is the patron of the Awami League.
So look, you have drawn so many red lines. I will not go there.
I'm asking you a question, sir. Is Mujibur Rahman a foreign agent for you?
You have drawn so many red lines beforehand.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have a last? So my last thought. Let's look ahead. What do you expect from the election?
What I expect from the election is that the party that many of you are saying that is the largest party in Bangladesh will be proved to be having no support. Well, how can we show that? We will show if there is no intimidation, as Hasina's son has openly declared that they will incite violence. If that does not happen, I think 70 to 80% will turn up for voting, and they will choose their leaders. And the Awami will be banished from the political equation.
Okay, you have every right to absolutely hate or like any political party in your own country. I think we are no one to comment on that, but you are saying, okay, it's not a, okay, all right, that is your perspective. Padma, very quickly, I have to give Ambassador Sikri the closing word.
I just wanted to say that, the guest from Bangladesh just said that he won't allow the Al-Qaeda to contest elections. Obviously, we're not saying the Al-Qaeda will contest elections, but you don't mind maintaining good relations, as you also said, with a country that is close not only to the Al-Qaeda, but a plethora of other terrorist groups. Now, that is a very, that's a peculiarity, because you spoke quite fondly of Pakistan, if I may say. Now, there is a tendency, Barkha, that would be my closing word, to romanticize, such protests as we have seen, not only in Bangladesh, in many other countries, as spring revolutions, somehow spearheaded by unhappy youth. As he said, the Awami League, we had a terrible time under the Awami League. I find that very difficult to believe, like you, because they were elected so many times over and over again. You can't say that each and every election was a sham, to start with. And I cannot romanticize these protests any longer. I feel that as far as Bangladesh is concerned, that cuteness, that awe factor is long over. We are definitely headed towards complete anarchy. And I feel sorry, actually, because it's one of my favorite countries in this region. And the people are wonderful. But somehow they're being led up the wrong garden path. And I hope somebody comes to its rescue before it's too late.
Okay, Master Secretary, closing comment. You have to close after that. Yeah.
The issues that your very distinguished panelist from Bangladesh has said, all these issues, whether he calls Awami League a dictatorial, a fascist, and no freedom of speech, and I'm threatened, all this is exactly what Muhammad Yunus, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami, has been doing for the last 18 months. There is no security in Bangladesh. Even the ordinary professors, even the ordinary teachers, whether they are, the Hindus, of course, have been just surrounded by a mobocracy and forced to resign, leave their jobs. But even the Muslims who are there, they are in fear of their life. They're sending, they are so scared of what is happening there. The media houses have been taken over. There is no media freedom at all. And the absolutely media people in jail, hundreds of people in jail. And the minorities, Chinmoy Das, in jail for 1 year. So everything that he's saying is actually applies for what has been happening for the last 18 months. Complete absence of freedom, complete absence of democracy, and the love for Pakistan is, of course, motivated by the Jamaat-e-Islami, because the Jamaat-e-Islami has always been the A team of Pakistan in Bangladesh, right from the East Pakistan days, right from the time that Maulana Maududi founded the Jamaat-e-Islami, about 80 years or more than 80 years ago. So I think that it is that Jamaat-e-Islami that is forcing, or in fact will only have speakers who will come on your panel who will say that same thing, because they have been living that and wanting that for the last 54 years. We do know that Jamaat-e-Islami on its own never got more than 5 to 10% of the vote in any election. To say that every election in Bangladesh was, absolutely undemocratic is ridiculous. Sheikh Hasina in 2009 was elected in an army-run election, because they had an army-backed caretaker government for 2 years, and Sheikh Hasina got 3/4 of the vote. And Jamaat-e-Islami, by the way, the reason that it was a court case was fought in Bangladesh, and the reason why the Jamaat-e-Islami was not allowed to participate, because the Jamaat-e-Islami does not accept the constitution of Bangladesh. They say that the Quran is higher than the constitution of Bangladesh, and so we will not accept the constitution of Bangladesh. So a party which does not accept the basic document of a country and then claims that, this is the kind of country we want, this is absolutely worrisome for the people of Bangladesh, because the people of Bangladesh are very proud of their history and their own achievements and what they have been able to achieve.
Well, I will say that the sort of pull and push of this very conversation gives you a small glimpse into how volatile the situation in Bangladesh is. It's a powder keg. It's a ticking bomb. For India, it is a kind of calling for a reset of a strategic policy, of foreign policy, because as a parliamentary panel led by Shashi Tharoor has warned, what is happening in Bangladesh may pose a security challenge that is the biggest since 1971. We are very close to the anniversary of the war that birthed Bangladesh, and the attempt by certain quarters in Bangladesh to even rewrite that fact, I think, tells you everything that you need to know. For me, that is the bottom line. We leave it there. To Mohammad Ishraq from Bangladesh, to Ambassador Sikri, to Padma Rao. Always a pleasure. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.